All right, so we're going to move on with our topics that we had for today. Other really important news. President Trump wasn't holding back during his tour of Alligator Alcatraz. The reptile-infested ICE detention center deep in the Florida Everglades is officially opens tomorrow, and it's got room for 3,000 of the worst, they say, violent criminal migrants. We're talking child predators, rapists, and fentanyl traffickers. They'll be up against the alligators and pythons. Here's what the president had to say.
It's known as Alligator Alcatraz, which is very appropriate because I looked outside and that's not a place I want to go hiking anytime soon. This facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation. We took the FEMA money that Joe Biden allocated to pay for the free luxury hotel rooms, where he's paying hundreds of millions of dollars in New York City, and we used it to build this project.
But right on.
U.S., what's going on, patriots? It's the conservative current. And today we're talking about something the mainstream media is already losing their minds over. President Trump's newest move in the Florida Everglades. They're calling it Alligator Alcatraz. And guess what? I absolutely love it.
But right on schedule, the liberal media and Democrats just took the bait on Alligator Alcatraz.
Alligators rarely attack people. Pythons rarely attack people. That is extremely performative.
They definitely want to scare people.
It's wasteful and an incredible risk to our ecological resources.
These are our friends and our neighbors. These are people who are picking our crops.
Ron DeSantis is still governor of Florida. He took the Comfy Couch hosts on a tour of the concentration camp that he's building in Florida in order to round up people, brown people, and throw them in a camp because he doesn't want them in Florida.
Greg, Joy Reid is so full of it. The couch is not comfy.
No, not at all. It's very stiff. Look, the Dems fall for it. They call it cruel and inhumane. So how is it cruel and inhumane? Because it's remote? It's surrounded by alligators? There are like 100+ airports in Florida that meet that criteria. Everything in Florida is surrounded by alligators. How many pictures have you seen on this show of golf courses where an alligator comes up on the fairway and everybody's going, oh, look at the elevator? The angle the Dems are going to exploit, because they have nothing else, is compassion, right? But it no longer works because they showed an overwhelming lack of compassion for the victims of sex trafficking among illegals, the victims of rape and murder of illegals. So you can't lecture us on empathy or compassion when all of yours are for the perpetrator. The great thing about Trump and what the left misses, he knows how to sell something. He knows that you incentivize with words. He causes his message to do the heavy lifting. Right? So if you're an illegal with an opportunity to leave, you could leave now or take your chances and end up in a place surrounded by alligators. It might not even exist. It doesn't matter. He creates this in your head, which is why it's not surprising. 1 million people have already self-deported because there were 4 words that served as the message. Biden's out, Trump's in. We better leave. So this is great. I love Alligator Alcatraz. Sounds like it came from the makers of Sharknado, but it's all part of the message of self-deportation, and he is a master at it. It's hilarious.
They know in the messaging, it's almost like Trump is good cop and bad cop, because they're saying he's leaning into the alligator thing. He's talking about, you step here, you step that way, you're still going to die if you run from them. But then they're also saying, hey, listen, it's air conditioned. You've got all the resources. This isn't hell on earth. It's a perfectly suitable prison. And I guess in that way, he kind of neuters their attacks, but also leans into the messaging he wants.
Right. Well, and also because it's catchy, right? Alligator Alcatraz, and you can picture it. And I think it's better than trying to reopen the old Alcatraz. This makes a lot more sense. Plus, one of the guys, the Attorney General from Florida, he was on Newsroom this morning, and I said, well, how long do you think a stay is going to be at Alligator Alcatraz? And it's not years. He said days, possibly weeks, in some cases months if they have a bunch of due process hearings. So there's that. Also, the deterrence factor is also important. So it is illegal to cross into the country. And you might say, like what on the montage, you might say, well, but these are people that are doing work, and maybe they haven't done anything wrong, but they did do something wrong initially. And if they want to change that in Congress, they can try to do that. But the deterrence factor is also important. The self-deportation is one thing. Plus, we have additional cooperation now from these countries in taking back their illegal immigrants. So all of these things are happening, and it is what President Trump promised to do. He promised to close down the border. That has happened. Bill Melugin was just reporting on X the numbers for June in terms of people coming across the border. It's at like absolute record lows, and this is what people wanted. If Congress wants to change somebody's work permit or ability to stay and work longer, they have the ability to do that. And I think President Trump would be willing to listen, but they can't get past their hatred of him and grasping at straws to come up with a coherent message that they could go to him with.
Harold, they said two things today that I thought were interesting to me, and this is just from the angle of how Democrats are objecting to it. They said if you're getting sent there simply because you're here illegal and you don't have a record that they want to put you in jail for, and I think it's right out of President Trump's mouth, is or maybe it was Ron DeSantis said, you could be at the gate of this place and choose to self-deport. But if you're a murderer or rapist, if you have those kind of charges, the worst of the worst, then they're going to keep you there. What of that are Democrats objecting to?
I have no clue. I think there's some Republicans who are raising concerns about this vote. But let me step back. I think that if this thing here works, I think it's great. I think there's a lot of theatrics here that I think may bother some. Doesn't really bother me. But two, the border, the president has been outstanding on the border. The number of crossings has decreased so dramatically. It makes every American, particularly Democrats, to understand that there were things that the previous administration probably could have done, or not probably, certainly could have done to reduce those numbers. The hard part, Joey, has always been immigration. I served in Congress 25 years ago, and we were grappling with how do you provide paths to citizenship and who deserves a path to citizenship, who might be an undocumented worker. We're seeing now ask from industry, retail, agriculture, asking administration to have some leniency there. It's more complicated, more nuanced. Now, the hierarchy of deportations is where the president's having his challenge. I hope that whomever populates Alligator Alcatraz, which is a clever name, Greg's right, the president's good at this performative stuff, that we put more violent criminals there than we do law-abiding gardeners and law-abiding dishwashers and law-abiding retail workers. Because as we're seeing, even to ask from the president's own supporters not to deport people whom are so critical to the economy. One thing we know as we look at this issue now is that the reliance that the United States economy has on for its massively positive performance on undocumented immigrants is larger than we thought even before the election.
Rosanna, when gardeners and retail workers and farm pickers, when they are employed under a false identity, claiming 14, 15 dependents so they don't have to pay weekly taxes, and then when the IRS catches up to them, they go into the shadows and come back to the same place sometimes with a different identity, they're not really law-abiding, are they?
Well, I don't know about...
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
I know you did, but that's a part of this conversation.
Let's face it, the migrants are a very part of our ecosystem, getting people into the farmlands, picking those crops that we need as Americans. But, this is a flashpoint about land, power, and respect, right? Because the conservationists are coming out and say, you can't use this land. You're going to pollute our water. You're going to destroy our wildlife. You're going to reverse decades of Everglades restoration work. And then there's the Native Americans who say, wait a second, this is our land. You're not supposed to be doing anything like this on our land. And by the way, Governor DeSantis got this detention center up and running in 8 days. That could never happen in New York. We're talking about in New York doing new jails in New York. It's taking years just to discuss it, let alone 8 days. That could never happen in New York.
There's one thing that, when we talk about inflation, we always talk about currency. But the Dems have managed to apply the principle of inflation onto people. Flood the country with cheap labor. You make the American workers here worth less.
Trump just unveiled a brand new detention facility deep in the Florida swamps, surrounded by alligators, pythons, and thick marshland. The left is calling it cruel, inhumane, and even, get this, a concentration camp. But let's be clear, this place isn't for hard-working immigrants. This is a prison for violent, criminal migrants, the ones the Democrats keep pretending don't exist. We're talking about child predators, rapists, cartel drug runners, fentanyl traffickers who are poisoning our children. And the left wants to protect them from an uncomfortable prison? Are you kidding me? Trump didn't just throw together some fear factory. This facility is air-conditioned, operational, and built in just 8 days using FEMA funds. Not for luxury hotels in Manhattan, but for real border enforcement. Remember those millions Biden spent to put illegal aliens in high-end NYC hotels? That's over. Trump redirected that cash to where it matters, border security and law and order. And that's why they're panicking. The only way out is deportation. That's right. The only way out is deportation. And guess what happened since Trump started talking tough again? Self-deportation is through the roof. 1 million have already left voluntarily. You think that's a coincidence? No, that's strategic brilliance. He's using psychological deterrence. It's not just a prison. It's a message. The liberal media says Trump's scaring people. Good. That's the point. You want to break our laws? Sell fentanyl? Prey on kids? Then you deserve to be scared. You hear this garbage? They're picking our crops. How many times are we going to hear this lie? Let me ask you something. Since when did breaking the law to work under a fake name make you a hero? If you commit fraud, use fake dependents to avoid taxes, and come back under a false ID after being deported, you're not a law-abiding worker. You're a criminal. Period. This is about protecting American lives. Our children, our neighborhoods, our sovereignty. And the cherry on top? Environmentalists and tribal activists suddenly show up screaming about wetlands and sacred land. But they're silent when cartels dump bodies in the desert or smugglers trample through federal land by the thousands. You know what this really is? It's a power struggle. The globalist elite, the people in D.C., Hollywood, and Silicon Valley, want open borders because they profit off cheap labor, political pawns, and chaos. But Trump? Trump wants borders. He wants law and order. He wants to protect the forgotten men and women of this country. Look, if you're coming here the legal way, God bless you. That's what makes this country great. But if you're coming here to hurt our people, to poison our streets, to spit on our laws, you've got 2 choices now: turn around or meet the swamp. Alligator Alcatraz isn't a myth. It's a metaphor for what happens when America finally gets serious again. President Trump promised us secure borders. He promised consequences for criminals. And he's delivering one alligator at a time.